Hey everyone, okay, today we have an episode that a lot of you have been asking for here on Facebook, on the show, on Twitter, on Periscope, online. You've been asking me to dive really in depth into the next iPhone, the smartphone landscape for the rest of the year. There's a lot of launches coming up. As you can see behind me, and we're going to dive more into this, we have our graphic. If you haven't seen the graphic, I really encourage you to go on our Instagram, Twitter, twitter.com/@MarkGurman, twitter.com/technology, and bloomberg.com/technology to check out this graphic. We dive in with this really nice mock-up, everything to expect in the new phone. So we're going to go through that in a minute. But everyone, please send in your questions on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll spend a lot of time today doing Q&A, answer anything you want about Apple, the upcoming iPhone 8, the Samsung launch, the Note 8 launch today. LG has a phone coming up. Essential launched their phone these over the last couple of weeks. We had a story on that as well. So please ask me anything. But first, I kind of want to dive into the evolution of the iPhone. The iPhone 8 that's coming out this year, as you can see behind me, is a big upgrade. It's a huge design change. It's one of the biggest design changes in the iPhone's history. So I thought it'd be really cool to sort of show you an evolution of the iPhone's history from the beginning to what we have now with the iPhone 7 Plus. So thank you to iCracked, it's an iPhone repair company, for being able to get us all these phones so quickly. So let's dive into it. So what we have here, and let's zoom in to take a closer look, starting here. This is the original iPhone, right? This was the small phone, 3.5-inch screen. It has the home button on the bottom. It has the black antenna plastic at the very bottom. It has the metal back. It's scratched pretty easily. The small 2-megapixel camera here. This is the phone that started it all. It was the original iPhone, and I remember to this day when I was in line for this phone for 14, 15 hours. It was a huge day in technology, and it sort of kicked off the smartphone revolution. A year later, there was the iPhone 3G, and it was this phone right here. This was the first phone, the first iPhone that was sold on a subsidy. So that meant you were able to get an 8-gigabyte model for $200. So after, if you had the original iPhone, you spent $500, $600, $700 on that, you were able to adjust to a $200, $300 phone with that first of a 2-year contract subsidy. That was available on multiple carriers, but we're still not in the Verizon age. We'll get into that. A year later was the iPhone 3GS. It looked exactly the same except for this metal-like chrome finishing where it says iPhone. On the 3G it was gray. You can see the difference there a bit in the light. Difference, video recording. So it took toward the 3rd generation for Apple to finally add video recording to the phone. Faster processor. There was a compass, so if you're stuck in the forest and you want to navigate, you had that too for those who needed it. Here is the iPhone 4 and 4S design. This was, I think, the biggest year-over-year change in the iPhone's history. They moved from this plastic back to a stainless steel band around. And you remember the whole antenna gate situation if you covered the side of the phone incorrectly. But they changed that, or incorrectly in their book, but they changed that the year after, fixing that. So it had this glass front and back, still the 3.5-inch screen. Very nice having the glass in the front and the back and the stainless steel. Now, why this phone is so important to what we're talking about today? Well, according to our reporting and our sources, the iPhone 8, or whatever Apple chooses to call it, at least the premium model with the OLED screen, they're going to go back to this glass front and back. So you're going to have the camera in the back. It's going to be vertical line. We'll get into that. But we're going to be going back to the glass and stainless steel design. After the 4S in 2012, the first iPhone design introduced after Tim Cook became CEO and Steve Jobs passed away was the design of the iPhone 5. That was these two phones right here. So it came in black and white, black front, white front, black back, silver back. I had the black one. It chipped initially when they first came out. I really liked it. It looked really cool. It was taller. It's a 4-inch screen, same width, added other features like LTE. And you can also see on our graphic that I talked about the evolution of the iPhone features in comparison to other products in the smartphone landscape. 2013, they came out with another pair of new phones, the 5S and the 5C. The 5C with the plastic back, like the earlier iPhone 3G and 3GS, was short-lived. 4-inch screen, had an A6 processor, so it was a year behind the 5S, which had this more silvery, they call it space gray back, and of course the Touch ID fingerprint scanner on the bottom. This was a really powerful phone for the time. It had the first 64-bit chip, which meant that it was a bit faster than others on the market. The True Tone Flash, so more accuracy when taking pictures. Then 2014 was the big year for Apple. That was the year where they did the iPhone 6. So they increased the size to a 4.7-inch screen. They also had the 6 Plus, a 5.5-inch screen, an updated landscape interface, a metal back. They really went all out, and this was a huge growth milestone for the iPhone. And today, as you know, we have the 7 Plus, came out last year. This is the jet black model, the dual camera on the back for optical image stabilization and the bokeh effect in the camera. All sorts of new great features in that upgrade, but of course the design very similar except for the jet black and matte black colors to the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus before it. So let's zoom out back here and jump into the graphic and take a closer look what to expect past this evolution for the iPhone 8. And we're getting a lot of questions, so let's zoom in and I'll answer some questions as we're taking a look at the graphic. So first question, what are the odds that Apple actually releases 3 new phones at their September event? I think it's highly likely, and we've reported this a few times, that Apple is planning 3 new phones. The one you see here is just one of them. So this is the premium, all-new design. Some people call it the Edition model, the Pro model. It's going to be around $1,000 starting point, according to what we've reported. Other 2 models are going to be sort of upgrades to the 7 and 7 Plus. Might have a glass back, inductive charging. Same prices likely that the 7 and 7 Plus start at right now. Same general colors. There's people talking about this new copper gold color to replace rose gold, but this is the premium model as you can see here. So I think it's highly likely that all 3 will be introduced at the September event. But I think at launch initially, the lower 2 models are going to be easier to find compared to this harder to produce premium version. How exactly will Face ID be able to read your face while the iPhone is laying flat on a table? So that's a good question. The Face ID sensor is going to be right here in the notch, and you can see it says on our graphic the sensor is to unlock the phone and make payments. So the sensor has this lens that is sort of a wide-angle lens, and it could sense your face from afar. Apple has been working on this for 4 or 5 years. They, according to people we spoke to, they were initially trying to use this technology in an update to the Apple TV to have some Kinect-like features. This sensor is very accurate. I don't know if you've used a Microsoft Kinect, the facial recognition sensor that was an attachment in some of the earlier Xbox models, but it's very accurate, and that's the same type of technology that Apple acquired and is going to be using in this iPhone when it's announced in September. Now, we have tons of people asking about the price. So this is how I like to explain it in terms of the price. The iPhone 7 starts, and this is not on contracts, this is fully unlocked from Apple's website or direct from the carrier without a monthly plan. $650. That's the base model of the iPhone 7. The base model of the iPhone 7 Plus is $770, right? Think about it this way. Those are the bottom capacities. The iPhone 7 Plus, with the highest capacity available, 256 gigabytes, starts at $960. We know there's 3 phones. We know that they're going to update those 2 tiers of pricing from the 7 and 7 Plus. So we know that this new phone, the one with the OLED screen and all these features we're going to get into in a second, it's going to cost more because it's more premium. It's also going to cost more because it's harder to make, and because there's going to be less quantity, and because the features in there cost more to produce, and obviously the R&D that went into the making of the phone. So if the iPhone 7 Plus already goes up to $970 or so, this phone obviously is going to have to come in over that. That's why the price of that higher end premium phone is definitely probably going to be around the $1,000 price point. Not unprecedented. You saw the Note 8 introduced today, and that was also in the high $900s of dollars. But there's lots of reports out there that this thing's going to be $1,500, $1,600. I don't think we're reaching that scope. I think close to $1,000 unlocked is where it's going to be at. But obviously, you're going to see lots of carrier incentive programs as well. Another question here, in what ways do you think carriers can get customers to buy the new higher priced iPhone? That's a good question. Well, you saw Verizon released a few new unlimited plans today. T-Mobile has a bunch of plans. AT&T and Sprint have their leasing programs. So what they're going to try to do is encourage people to sell them their old iPhones, get a good trade-in value, maybe $200, $300, $400. They're going to say, oh, in that case, it only costs you $500, $600. So you'll see a lot of marketing in that direction. But no doubt, this phone is going to be very expensive compared to other smartphones on the market, besides the Note 8. What's the most significant change? Well, that's a good question, and this graphic outlines the most significant changes, so let's jump into those. So let's start at the top. We talked about the 3D facial recognition sensor. Now, that is going to be used in lieu of Touch ID. So right now, you scan your fingerprint. Now you'll be able to scan your face. And what that means is it can quickly unlock your phone in just a couple tenths of a second, which is very fast. It's probably a little bit faster than Touch ID. And what we're told is that the facial recognition sensor on the iPhone 8 is going to be able to take in many more data points. And let's zoom out here. We'll talking about this a little bit more. It's going to be able to take in more data points than the Touch ID fingerprint scanner. And what that means is that's going to be more secure and it's going to be more accurate. And let's zoom out here a little bit more. Okay, now to go along with the 3D facial recognition sensor is going to be an infrared sensor. So a lot of people have been asking, not only on the show, but on Twitter, how is this going to work in the dark? Let's say you're out at night on a walk or a run and you want to access your phone. Let's say you're in bed and the lights are off. With Touch ID, that wasn't a problem because it's just your fingerprint. You can feel where it is. Well, this is going to have an infrared sensor, which is sort of the same technology used in a remote control. Now, when you shoot a remote control at a TV to change, there's a stream of light that goes from the remote to the TV, but it's infrared, so you don't see it. It's completely invisible. Same thing. This sensor is going to light up your face, but the light's going to be completely invisible. You're not going to see it. It's not going to affect you. You're not going to know. It's going to work. Another feature is inductive charging. People have been asking for such a long time about wireless charging on an iPhone. The Palm Pre, and I thought the Palm Pre, when that was announced at CES in 2009, was the coolest thing. At that point, that was right after the iPhone 3G was announced, before the 3GS. It had more features at the time than the iPhone, but the iPhone with the 4, and of course, after HP bought Palm and shut it down, the iPhone just catapulted and took off right around that time and completely destroyed Palm and the Pre. But to my point, that phone had inductive charging. So it's nice to see that finally, 10 years later, the iPhone is going to get inductive charging. Now, Apple has a past history of charging extra for accessories that are not absolutely essential to the phone. You saw that with the AirPods. They bundled the wired headphones for free, I guess you can say for free, with the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, even though there was no headphone jack. But the AirPods were $170 as an extra charge, and obviously Apple has supply issues usually when they release new accessories. If you remember, the Apple Pencil, the Smart Keyboard, and the AirPods over the last few years or so all were very constrained at launch. So maybe, based on that past history, we'll see that with the inductive charging. You'll see them being very hard to find at the get-go, and you'll probably see an extra cost for those. Longer power button, so it's going to be a little bit longer on the side of the phone. Let me hold up this. On the iPhone 6 and newer, and the 7 and 7 Plus and 6 Plus has the power button on the side above the SIM card tray. It's going to be a bit longer, so when you're holding it with one hand, it's going to be easier to grasp. More questions coming in here. Can you talk about the headphones and the headphone jack? That's a good question. Well, the headphones and the headphone jack, you can see on the bottom of the 6 right here, there's the headphone jack next to the dock connector. The 7 and 7 Plus, they don't have a headphone jack. It's just the lightning connector. Same situation on the iPhone 8. There is going to be no headphone jack, and it's going to come with the lightning headphones, and you'll be able to buy the AirPods and pair it with that. So no changes there. More questions coming in here. Can you talk about battery life? Well, battery life, that's an interesting question. So back to the screen here. The screen is slightly larger, we're told, than the screen on the iPhone 7 Plus and 6 Plus, which means it might use a little bit more battery life. It's a higher resolution screen. The OLED panel, it's going to be more efficient. My opinion overall, don't expect much better battery life on this iPhone 8, but expect that you're going to get the same or a little bit better battery life than the previous generation. I don't think that any iPhone model has really taken a huge leap in battery life, besides when there have been no design changes, so moving from the 3G to 3GS, because they were able to recycle the same design, make the battery a little bit bigger, you had a little bit of uptick in battery life. The 5C had a pretty good battery life as well. And of course, if you're moving to the 6 Plus or 7 Plus, you're getting a giant battery. So if you're moving from one of the smaller iPhones to this bigger iPhone, I think you're going to see a bit of a battery life boost, but I wouldn't anticipate anything like that Motorola phone that lasts for, I think it's 24 hours. More questions coming in here. Can you repeat when the official unveiling is? That's a good question. So the event to announce the new phone will probably be announced about 2 weeks or so, between maybe 7 days and 2 weeks before it happens. They'll go on a whole marketing and PR push about that on their website, and you'll see it online. Obviously, we'll write about it and talk about it here on the show and our other TV programs when it's announced. But it's going to happen sometime in September. It always does. Another question coming in here, how much bigger will it be than the iPhone 7? So that's a good question. So this bullet point we have here, it has a nearly all-screen design. And if you saw our website or our video about the Essential phone a couple of weeks ago, and you've seen the coverage of the Samsung Note 8 and the Galaxy S8, it's very similar. So they're dropping the bezels in favor of this notch to fit the camera work and the 3D sensor and the infrared scanner, and they're going to make it basically an all-screen phone. So what that means is that the phone is going to be about the same overall size as the iPhone 6 and iPhone 7, which you can see here, but the screen will be about the same size, actually slightly larger than the one on the iPhone 6 Plus and 7 Plus. So that means you're getting basically the iPhone 7 Plus screen size in the iPhone 7 body. There's been a lot of people I talk to who really love the big screen of the Plus iPhone models, the 6 Plus, the 6S Plus, and the 7 Plus, but they don't like that bigger form factor that makes it harder to carry. So essentially what you'll be getting is you'll be getting a phone that's this size in terms of screen in a body this big, and you can see how much space you'll be saving while still getting that more premium screen size with more functionality. Now, some more bullet points here, things that we should cover. Like I said, it's going to have the stainless steel edges and the glass front and back from the iPhone 4 and 4S that we showed you here. Can you believe how small these things used to be? I just want to show, I was looking at this earlier before we started. Here, I'll show, compare it to the 6 here first. Look at that difference. It's unbelievable. And it's even smaller on the original iPhone. We've really come a long way in terms of size. I remember when technology was first coming into the smartphone age, everyone was talking about, things are getting smaller and smaller, but now it's going in the other direction. We're trying to make things bigger and bigger, and now again, we're trying to go smaller and smaller, and you can see that by this all-screen design. Another pair of features have to do with the camera. So there was this big HomePod leak that had a lot of information in the software that they released early that has files related to the Apple TV, the iPhone 8, and whatnot. So the smart camera feature was revealed there. That's going to work with some new AI algorithms to be able to tell you what you're taking a picture of. If you're taking a picture of a person, it'll know it's a person. You're taking a picture of a plant, it'll know it's a plant. It'll be able to better optimize for those use cases. I've been testing this Leica camera. It has a similar functionality, but obviously you need to tell it. If it's a plant, if it's an outside photo, this new smart camera feature, or whatever they end up calling it, is going to do that automatically. The iPhone does some of that now, but this will be taking it to another level. Another question coming in here, is it waterproof? If not, why haven't they made a waterproof iPhone? That's a good question. So the 6S that came out in 2015 was sort of water resistant, very little, but they didn't market it because it wasn't at that level where they felt comfortable marketing it. But the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, they're not completely waterproof like the Apple Watch Series 2, but it's water resistant to the point where you can use it in the rain, you can wash it off a little bit. If you drop it in the tub or the sink or whatnot, you should be fine. So they do talk about that, and I'd be shocked if that didn't carry over to the iPhone 8. And in terms of comparison, I was talking to someone the other day about the Essential phone, and we found it odd that that's not waterproof. So hopefully they upgrade there. So that's one area where Essential is a little bit behind, but you see Apple taking some of those design aesthetics that we saw last week with Essential and the Samsung phone recently. Another question coming in here, any AR or VR components? That's a really good question. So on the back of the phone, there's going to be this camera sensor that's vertical. So let me show you this. So you can see the camera sensor on the back of the 7 Plus is horizontal, the two cameras next to each other. And let's zoom in here to take a closer look at that. So you can see the sensor here, they're next to each other, right? On the 8, they're going to be stacked, so they're going to be on top of each other. And I believe that's going to offer benefits for AR software. ARKit is a big new initiative that they're launching with iOS 11, and the vertical cameras may make that experience a little bit better. We had a show a couple weeks ago with the Asus AR Tango phone. We had some really cool demos, so I think you're going to see a lot of the AR stuff on stage when they announce the iPhone 8. And let's zoom back out here and take a closer look at the graphic again. More questions coming in here. What's the home button experience going to be like? Now, here's another point we didn't touch on yet on the graphic is the virtual home button area. And as we zoom in here, so in order to make the phone as small as they're trying to make it, and let's zoom in even closer at the bottom a little bit, as small as they're trying to make it, as slim as they're trying to make it, they have to remove something. So they're removing the home button. And that means you won't have the physical home button, but it's going to be just the bottom of the screen, and there's going to be this virtual home button area. So there's going to be some controls in there based on the task you're doing, and you'll be able to just click the bottom of the screen in order to invoke multitasking and going back to the home screen and Siri, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But the most important thing, the day of the home button is over. Some more stuff, some more questions coming through here. How much faster is the new processor? That's a good question. So this is going to have an A11 processor. They usually just add a number every year. The 7 Plus has the A10 Fusion processor. This A11 processor is based on a 10 nanometer design. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. You might not know what it means, but what's really important is to know that it just makes it a little bit more efficient. So the 10 nanometer chip should have some improvements for those who are finding battery draining quickly or tasks in RAM loading up the phone so it slows down. Another cool question coming in here. Any new colors you know of? Any guesses? I think Apple's going to stick to their general silver, gold, and black strategy. So I'm going to assume that the back is going to look very similar in terms of the black glossy glass of the iPhone 4 that we showed you earlier. Of course, there'll be a white and silver model. One question that people have been asking me, what about a white front, right? So the black front combined with the notch, it all blends in together because the tip of the camera sensors and the infrared sensors are black, so it all blends in nicely. But imagine if the area around the screen was white and white slim bezels with that notch. It might be really distracting while watching video. If you've seen the Essential phone, the camera notch is much smaller. It's just this area right there. And the black on all the different color models, even the white model, the front is black and it all blends in and watching video is fine. Maybe they'll play some tricks with the status bar to make it all blend in. We'll see. I'd be very interested to see. And the other color I'm expecting is a new version of gold. They've had this yellow, champagne, regular gold color since the 5S in 2013. They added rose gold, this pinkish hue, in 2015 with the iPhone 6S. I think it's time for another shade of gold, and I think we might see that. There's talk about this copper gold. Let's see. Obviously, no matter what kind of gold, people are going to really love it because everyone loves the new gold colors for some reason. Another question coming in here. Anything new with Siri? It was really surprising to me watching the developer conference and going into the conference. There's not a lot of new functionality in Siri this year related to the iPhone. There's some new features for the HomePod, like asking for custom music playlists. There's a feature where you can talk to it in one language and ask it to translate to you in another language. Microsoft and Skype have had that for a few years, but nothing game-changing, not a big leap in Siri's capabilities. Maybe they've made some changes on the back end for iOS 11 and the iPhone 8. Who knows? But Siri and the HomePod are the two big Siri-related stories for this year. So maybe we'll see more advancements on the Siri front next year, but not this year. How advanced is the new camera? That's a good question. So camera updates are something that they love, right? They always improve the cameras. So I think the stacked vertically aligned AR cameras in the back are going to be a big leap. Right now on the 7 Plus, you see that there's two lenses. They're both 12 megapixel lenses to make that bokeh effect. It uses one camera to take the pictures like a close-up version. Another one is a far range version. They blend it together to have that blur effect. So what I think you're going to see is you're going to see enhancements to the bokeh camera as well. The Samsung Note 8 that was announced today has that same feature. And it actually has this really cool feature where you can edit the blur in the background and you can adjust the blur. On iOS 11, they've added the feature so you can take away the blur, but you can't adjust it, you can't move it around. And that's something that Lytro worked on. Lytro is this few $100 camera. I haven't seen many people talk about it, but I know Apple's hired a lot of people from that startup over the last few years, so I'd be surprised if we didn't see some enhancements there. Other questions coming in here. Any more VR components? Well, Apple's really focusing on AR with iOS 11. I'd be shocked if they partnered with anyone on a VR headset. People are wondering if there's going to be some sort of partnership like Samsung and Facebook Oculus VR has with the Gear VR headset. I'm not expecting any tie-up like that, but maybe in the future. They've promoted a lot of VR stuff with High Sierra, the new Mac operating system, so maybe we'll see some integration here and there. Overall, please check out the graphic on the website. We have a long story here with all the details, and we have another great comparison chart that we made here at Bloomberg that walks you through where different key smartphone innovations have appeared over the course of smartphone history, which is, we talk about it like it's been a long time, but it's only been 10 to 15 years. So take a look at that and stay tuned. We'll have more great stuff for you next week. And of course, when the iPhone 8 comes out and when it's announced, we'll have all the hands-on coverage. So stay tuned to that. Send me questions anytime on Twitter, twitter.com/Mark Gurman, and check us out every Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern Time. Thank you.